Everybody has an album in their collection that they picked up. It was an album that probably was released and failed miserably. Everybody has one of those records. The thing that makes this album stand out is that you think this album is incredible and you have no idea why it flopped. Well, that's what we're going to talk about tonight. Albums that flop and you don't understand why. So let's get this one started. The panel's ready. This is great. All right. Welcome to the Contrarians. Tonight is a topic that I came up with, kids. And this is about records that you think should have been something that weren't. Like, everybody's heard about records that, you picked up something in your past and you're going, oh my God, what a great record. But the record never took off. No one knows about this album. No one knows anything about this band practically. So this is what we're throwing out. We're throwing it out to the panel because everybody's heard something that they think is great that everyone should know about. So this is the topic for tonight. So we've got Nick, we've got the Parish of Rock here, for God's sakes, and Rich and Martin Popoff, of course, and me. I'm just insignificant. So let's turn it over to Nick here. Nick, what's your first pick? And welcome to the show, and welcome, panel. Thank you for coming on tonight.
Thanks so much, Grant. I may have one or two that others have, so I'm going to sit back on a couple. I see
maybe
some foreshadowing. And then maybe Martin will have one or two one or two that I may mention we've talked about before. But the thing that's tough about this topic is, and consider we're contrarians, is most of these albums we kind of know why they flopped. I mean, we have a pretty good idea. Good idea. If you've done any research about the band or artist or album, you've got a pretty good idea. And if I don't, I know that somebody on this panel is going to be able to tell me. I'm going to start. I've evangelized over a certain artist and a band many times, and I'm going to start there. 1976, Steve Marriott came out with a solo album, this thing right here, the Marriott album. And it was supposed to be a big album, and it did nothing. It did less than nothing. It was sort of the intrigue was he recorded some of it in the UK, recorded some of it in the US. He had UK musicians, he had US musicians, and he had a UK side A and a United States side B, and it sank like a stone. Vocally, he is really over the top in fine form before his voice started to have, quote unquote, some issues later in his career. He's got some really good studio people on here. He's got Greg Ridley from The Pie and some of the Blackberries. One of the things that may have spelled a problem with this band is, and as I'm on record saying, I usually don't like to put too much importance on production. However, this album is produced by Kenny Kerner and Richie Wise of Kerner Wise.
Oh my God, really?
Hotter Than Hell. Yeah. And when you first listen to it, you're like, what the hell is going on here? It's not Hotter Than Hell. It's something else. So your ears have to acclimate to it. But it is a good album. It is, I have my theories as to why it sank like a stone. I think there's some, you had an artist who was starting to have some personal problems that were surfacing they couldn't handle. You had a management team that was focused on Frampton Comes Alive, the same management company. But other than that, I mean, I think this album is in the running and in the mix with other things that you see that was released in the marketplace in 76. And if you like anything about his voice, he is really over the top. I mean, he's giving it his all on this thing. So maybe it's just a failure in the music. He kind of tries to do his best. Ray Charles and some of this stuff, he does his best. James Brown, maybe the problem is people are catching on to a 5'3" or 4" Cockney trying to do James Brown. Maybe there was better examples. So I don't know. Maybe it was just a burnout in the marketplace. I don't know. Maybe because a couple of the Pie albums that preceded it really sank. So this was sort of still in the depths and never came out of the well. But it's worth a listen. It's worth hearing it. You can't even see it on streaming services. I found it on YouTube. Every time I see it, I seem to buy it. I may have half the copies in North America. I have more than one, but the album is Marriott, and it's certainly worth a listen. And I'll pretend I don't know why, but I kind of just gave an example of
Nick,
why I think
what year did that come out?
76.
76. So
yeah,
Humble Pie was still going though, right?
75. They were done.
Okay.
They were done in 75. David Foster's on here. You know, you always see him in the, with his piano, and he's sort of a celebrity now just from being a celebrity. There's some other interesting people on here, but it's certainly worth a listen. Ian Wallace is on there. He drummer, he of the King Crimson et al. So yeah, he's got some good people. He had a good band. They went on the road in the US, didn't do much business. I don't know if he toured the UK, and that was it. It was sort of an abbreviated thing. And then from this, the ill-fated, he went right from this to the reunited, ill-fated reunion of Small Faces with 2 albums out.
1978. So, yeah.
77, 78. Yeah. And then from there he starts to meander. Yeah.
Well, right. There you go. What would you rate that out of 10, Nick?
Well, if I'm going to rate it according to other things he's done and other pie-related stuff, I'll give it a 6. I think it's more of a curio. I think his voice, if you like his voice, it's so over the top. So many interesting things on there, but I'll give it a 6. Yeah,
he probably blew his voice out by that point. But
no, it was after that. No, this is like the height of his vocal prowess. It's just I think he was also getting to the height of his excesses too. Okay. Starting to have some mental issues.
Well, we all have those. So
yeah, but it was more pronounced.
All right, cool, excellent choice. All right, the Parish of Rock. You're up next.
Thank you.
What's your choice?
I've probably come about this slightly differently because I've looked at albums that I like, but I don't understand why they're not big. The ones behind me are clues. They're not actually the albums, but they are clues to what the albums may be. And the first one is this one. Creatures of the Night, Kiss. There you go. 10th studio album, released in 1982. Was intended to be their comeback album after the disappointments of Dynasty, Unmasked, and The Elder. By this time, Peter Criss had left, replaced by Eric Carr. Ace Frehley's on the cover, as you can see, but he didn't actually play on the album, and I think for all intents and purposes, he was out by that time. So why do I consider it was actually a flop? Well, it only reached number 45 in the US charts, which was slightly better than The Elder, but was certainly a lot worse than either Unmasked or Dynasty. In Australia, where they'd had some big hits with Unmasked and Dynasty, it only reached 33. And it actually only reached gold certification after 12 years. So I think by those standards, it was a flop for Kiss. Why don't I understand why it was a flop? I suppose, firstly, it's my favourite Kiss album. I think it was a definite return to hard rock form, and maybe it's even their heaviest album. It's got some fantastic tracks on there: Creatures of the Night, Saints and Sinner, Rock and Roll Hell, Love It Loud, Kill a War Machine. So there's some fantastic tracks. But most of all, the reason I don't know why it was a flop was because I didn't actually know it flopped. I thought it was a big hit. And it was only last year when this came out, the anniversary, and I read within this that it says, well, let's find it, Legacy, Creatures of the Night did not attain the commercial success it deserved. So that was the first time in 40 years that I hadn't realised it wasn't a hit. So my alternative universe, that's a massive album. In everybody else's universe, maybe not quite so. And the reason I think I thought it was a big hit was because here in the UK, it was actually a success. It got to number 22 in the album charts, which was the highest it got Kiss had since Destroyer. The single Creatures of the Night hit the top 30 singles, so that was a hit. It kind of tied in about the same time as New Wave of British heavy metal, so lots of people were talking about Kiss and were keen on them. It's kind of a hit because of the heavier album. And the tour that they did, they played Wembley Arena, which is a 12,500 seater arena, and they sold it out. Whereas previously, I would say it was probably 2/3 full. So for all of those reasons, I thought it was a big album. It was certainly a big album here, but apparently nowhere else in the world. And actually, the other reason is you'll see here I've got the End of the Road tour T-shirt, and every year they've come around for about the last 4 years doing This Is Our Last Gig in the UK tour. I'm expecting them back again next year as well. And they actually play 3 songs from the album: Creatures of the Night, War Machine, and also Love It Loud. So from that point of view, I had no idea or any inclination that it wasn't just a successful album. As I say, until I got the anniversary, that kind of took the wind out of itself a bit for me. What I also think is quite interesting is what happened because it flopped. Clearly, because it flopped, they took the makeup off. So you get that. I suspect if it had been the success in America that it was in the UK, we may never have got Lick It Up with the makeup taken off. I suspect they'd never have gone hair metal the way that they did. And I actually wonder if they would have even gone even heavier, and we might have ended up with more of a thrash Kiss later in the decade. Who knows? But anyway, none of that happened because it was a flop. But for me, it's still my favorite Kiss album.
Well, Parish, I just want to mention, but in UK, how did that sell in the UK? You said that the concert was a sellout, but how was the sales over there?
The album got to 22. It went gold, which for Kiss was pretty good.
Okay.
I have to say, with Lick It Up, they actually went up another notch again. That album got to number 7. And the rest of the albums through the 80s were top 10 albums over here. And they actually had a number 2 hit with all songs. Crazy Crazy Nights was actually a number 2 hit over here. So that we seem to have had a slightly different journey with Kiss over here than other parts of the world. But now they come over, as I say, pretty much every year for their end of road tour. And they're playing big arenas and selling them out. They're kind of a big brand over here now, but a lot later than most of the world.
Nice,
excellent choice.
That's my favorite Kiss album cover. I think it's a great cover. And I remember a few years later they re-released it with a different cover with the Bruce Kulick one, and I was like, why? And they changed the song order and the mix. The mix was different. I was like, why did they do that? There's nothing wrong with the original one, So
it eventually went gold. It went gold in the US, but it took till 94, according to the RAAA. Yeah. And the thing that was wild about it is I know Joe, our contrarian, saw them live on this tour, and it was quite a tour, but it did lousy business, half empty arenas, and the tour stalled. They pulled the dates towards the end, so it was really. Of course, it's tough to tour the Northeast in the middle of winter. That's always the sign of an album or band that's DOA. When you're touring like Boston and other far-flung places in the middle of January, that's just not a good sign.
Well, but think about it, Nick. It's not the first time Kiss has toured. They would know when to plan dates and everything.
Well, I know, but it's an album that was on life support. So if it's on life support, I've seen bands that go up to the Northeast, like Twisted Sister was touring the Northeast on an album that was doing shit. Mm-hmm. So when you see that in the Northeast, that's a little sign. Or maybe they come up to see Martin in Canada in the middle of winter. That's not a good sign. Not a good sign. If you have a rocking album, why are you going to go up into,
choose your tour wisely is what you're saying.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. But it was such a great choice. It's an excellent choice.
Yeah.
It's a good choice.
Definitely.
It should have been bigger than what it was. Yeah.
Yes.
All right, Rich, what you got?
Well, my first choice is this is a band I didn't get into until a few years ago. Up until a few years ago, I only knew them by their hits, and I think at least 2 or 3 of their hits I didn't like very much. And I'm talking about the band Blondie, and the album I'm referring to is The Hunter.
Yeah.
I don't remember any I didn't know anything about this album when it first came out. I didn't hear any songs from it on the radio. I think the thing that stuck out for me was Debbie Harry's big hairdo on the front, you know. So yeah, a year and a half ago, I really got into these guys, and I bought all their albums. And I heard this was supposed to be one of their worst ones. And when I put it on, the first song was the Orchid Club, which starts off with this Debbie Harry yelling, you know, like a monkey, and then this really cool drum pattern comes in. I was thinking, wow, I thought this album was supposed to suck, and I thought that I was really blown away by that song. I liked it better than the one before, Auto American. I thought they kind of lost their rock edge on that a little bit. I think this is a better album, even though there are no big hits. But I thought there was some really good stuff off it, like the Orchid Club. I think that's a terrific song. War Child, both that and Orchid Club were written by Debbie Harry and their bass player, Nigel Harrison, I believe. Mm-hmm. And then there's Island of Lost Souls, which is kind of a reggae number. And then the last song, The Hunter Gets Captured by the Game, is kind of like a jazzy, kind of bluesy song, which Debbie Harry sings really well. I think it's a really good album. I think that it wasn't exactly a complete commercial flop. I think it peaked at 32 or 35, but that was like their lowest charting album since their second one, Plastic Letters. And I think they broke up after this album came out.
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
But I think it's one that people should really kind of give another listen to, because I think there's some really good songs off it. Matter of fact, I think I'm going to start my next radio show off, which is next Tuesday, with the Orchid Club. I think that's a good, strong opening number for my show. So there we go, Blondie the Hunter.
It's a good that's a good pick. But you know, the band was pretty much a mess at this time, so that might be part of it. You know, there's some tracks on here that kind of harken back to what they did before, especially Auto American, but it's a lot more experimental than they had ever been in the past. Yeah. So maybe that was enough to turn people off. I don't know. We're throwing it out there. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it probably deserved better.
Yeah.
But it kind of got really mixed reviews back in the day. So I don't know.
Yeah, listen, and I don't remember anything off it being played on the radio. There are no big hits off it.
There are no hits, as opposed to Auto American, which had at least 3 singles off of it. So.
Yeah. My favorite Blondie album is Eat to the Beat. I think that's a great album.
That's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, Rich, that's a great choice, because no one talks about this record. Why didn't it do better? Maybe Blondie had their day in the sun. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a good pick.
Cool.
All right, Martin, what you got?
Okay, I'm going a little bit against Grant's sort of rule here, but you know, it's funny. You come up with
there are no rules here, Martin.
I know, but you come up with a concept, and the more you talk about it, the more it gets more specific, right? So I always looked at your title concept as more like relative flop, right? So this is a band, at least a couple of you guys might have heard of before, AC/DC. So this record here. I basically, so number one, Back in Black is 25 times platinum. For those about to rock is 4 times platinum. This is 1 times platinum. So I guess mathematically, I mean, I always wonder about this, but does that mean that, you know, one in every 25 Americans that has Back in Black has Flick of the Switch, and that's it? Like literally one, right? But why I wonder why this flopped is that, roughly speaking, those 3 records are about as good as each other. You know, I have my personal least favorite, which would be the middle one. And then I would go Back in Black. I mean, this is my favorite, but I'm not saying that should count for anything. I think it's marginally heavier, but it's not that much heavier. And even if it is heavier and less accessible, it's still very catchy. This House is on Fire is super catchy in here. Flick of the Switches, pretty heavy, but Guns for Hire is amazingly catchy on here. So is Bedlam in Belgium. These songs are not so far off the commercial songs that they had on the other ones. Granted, the production, famously it's self-produced, and the production is a little less high fidelity, but I don't think it's like absolutely like steel on steel screechy or anything. It still totally sounds like AC/DC. And the other reason is that we're at basically the last year of the new wave of British heavy metal, but the new wave of British heavy metal is still going. We're at the first year of hair metal. Every band like AC/DC is enjoying their peak right now. You got Judas Priest. Iron Maiden is in a super exciting place. Scorpions is in an exciting place. Sabbath has now just put out 2 albums and the live album. Ozzy's doing great guns. So to see them go from, a later, 25 times platinum down to 4, down to 1 in 1983, when heavy metal is actually for the first time in a long time going to come in really big in vogue in America in 84, 85, 86, moving forward, to see them drop off that much with a record that's pretty much just like the other ones. That's my first choice. Flick of the Switch.
It's a good album. I like it.
But think about it. What else was coming out at that time? They were kind of doomed. Everything's got a cycle. Probably Flick of the Switch. Just, it is what it is.
But you got an 80, an 81, an 83. I mean, those, you're coming off an album that sold 4 times platinum. It's not.
But you never know when that run's going to end.
Right? I know, but it doesn't make sense to see it end for AC/DC when metal is so big.
Nothing makes sense in this business.
I like it a lot better than the one before it. There's only one song I really like for those about to rock. So I thought Flick the Switch was a lot better.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
All right.
Similar kind of music, screechy, crazy, inaccessible lead singer. The other 2 albums are quote unquote heavy metal too, right? So
yeah.
Do you think it might be though, because they were less the songs are kind of less open to the masses? I mean, I think it's a really good heavy rock record, but it hasn't got the kind of catchy singles that either Highway to Hell, Back in Black, or even for those about to rock had. Yeah. And therefore, I think the million buyers could be the heavy rock core. The others were the people that maybe wouldn't be typically buying a heavy rock record.
Right.
But were drawn by the singles. I don't know, but I just wonder if that might be the reason.
I don't know.
Well, again, it's like your pick, Parish. It's the same kind of thing. You're at the height of the new wave of British heavy metal, and metal's going to be big in the States. So why didn't that Kiss album do that great, right? So
exactly. I don't know.
Taste change, things change, and you only have a certain amount of time, to do things. But everything comes around. Everything's circular. So, all right. Excellent, Martin. That's awesome.
Yep.
All right. So we're going to go into the grunge era. So I did a show, an interview with the band Flowerhead. This is my choice. They put out 2 albums. They came out in 1992. The first album sold 9,000 copies in its first year, but they supported Ned's Atomic Dustbin and Blind Melon. But we're talking that era with Nirvana, 1991. This band came out in 1992. They were a little bit more they were in that alternative rock vein, kind of heavy, but more psychedelic to some degree. Very creative, came out on Zoo Entertainment. But I don't know. It never did anything. But what I'm saying is that the songwriting's here. The production is here. Everything's great. Was the promotion wrong? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But I think both of these records, if anybody's looking to get turned on to something, I think both of these records are worth looking into, because the songwriting, the production, it's heavy. Oh my God. But we all know not everything can take off, you know? But I would just think in 1992, this was right in that right sweet spot with Nirvana, Stone Temple Pilots, Pearl Jam, that you think that this would have taken off. So I'm just throwing it out there. If I would look into this and see if you can, I just would recommend it and check it out.
Mm-hmm. Nice. All right, Nick, you're up.
All right, good. I'm going to feature a band that is now winding down. They're going to finish up some dates and then have a final send-off at the Merriweather Post Pavilion. They are massive in this part of the world, the East Coast. I just got a chance to see them in my part of the world, and I'm telling you, they still brought it, and there may have been, I don't want to overestimate, but I'm telling you, the next night, I think Vince Neil and Piercy and Quiet Riot played this outdoor venue, like a Shetty kind of place, fairgrounds. So I'm thinking of like 10,000, but it was packed. So I'm going to give you Kicks and their third album, which is Midnight Dynamite. Here's the thing, 1985, it's their third album. They've got Beau Hill producing. He's producing Rat. You've got Bob Halligan Jr., who's co-writing. You've got Atlantic Records. He's got a band with a decent look. They've got a vibe. They're phenomenal live, and it did nothing. Absolutely zero. There's been many theories over the years. Someone who experienced them live back in the day, it was a fantastic record. They still play songs off that record to this date. Of course, they went on to have "Blow My Fuse" was their big hit, courtesy of a Bob Halligan pen tune that had some help with Alan Niven, who called Atlantic Records and said, "You got a hit here. Why don't you do something with it?" But I think the band would tell you they think Midnight Dynamite is a better album. I think the theory is why it flopped is that Atlantic Records just did shit with it. They did nothing. They didn't push the band. They didn't get them on a tour. They didn't help at all. It was all Kicks had to do everything on their own. So it's an album that if you like that genre of music, it really stands out. It holds up well. And when you compare that to other albums in that time period, there's no reason why that should have done more business. And when you compare it to other albums in their canon, might be their best.
Wicked, Nick. That's awesome. I mean, you make a great case, right? I mean, they seem to have everything lined up, but who knows?
Yep.
There you go. Good one.
Cool. Nice.
All right, Parish, you're up.
Okay, my next one is ZZ Top, El Loco. Their 7th studio album, their second album after they had their 2-year hiatus. You might think it was actually a reasonable success, I guess, because it reached number 17 in the US charts. It achieved gold certification pretty quickly. So you might ask, why am I putting it as a flop? Well, I'm putting it as a flop because it's sandwiched between Deguelo, which achieved platinum, and this album, that achieved, I don't know how many times platinum, diamond, but obviously sort of an absolutely massive album. And then was followed up by 2 further big selling albums in Afterburner and in Recycler. So if you place it in amongst those run of albums, for some reason it only achieved gold, whereas the others were platinum or multi-platinum albums. I don't know why it flopped. It's my favorite ZZ Top album. You'll probably see a theme now starting to emerge around the albums I've picked. I think it's pretty rocking. It's got some great songs with like Tube Snake Boogie, 10-Foot Pole, Pearl Necklace, Heaven, Hell and Houston, Party on the Patio. At this time when it came out in 1980, all rock bands were releasing sort of soppy ballads like Styx and Babe and Foreigner, Waiting for a Girl Like You, etc. And this album has one of those, and I think one of the better ones in Leela. And yet that flopped as well. So for whatever reason, it just couldn't do right for doing wrong, really. But I think it's a great album, and even now they still play regularly those two double entendre songs, Tube Steak Boogie and Pearl Necklace. So that it still seems to be a pretty popular album with the fans. And I do wonder, again, a bit like I said with Kiss, if it hadn't flopped and it had been platinum or more, would we have actually got this? Or at least would we have got a version of that without the synthesizers and the drum machines, and would they have kept to a bit more of a stripped down sound like they did on El Loco? But clearly El Loco didn't achieve what they wanted it to, and led them to go off and experiment, and I guess the rest is history as a result.
Yeah, I actually had that out as a pick or honorable mention.
Yeah.
I was going to talk about it as well because it's the second deal for their new Warner's deal. So you would think, it's onward and upward. We're going to even do better than DeGueo. And, Tube Snake Boogie and Pearl Necklace were on the radio all the time. Yep. Layla, not so much. And the other thing about it is it's the best recorded album that they had to date. And you might even argue it's even better sounding than everything after, or they've had some shockingly interesting recordings moving forward. But for a timeless, well done 70s recording, it's super accessible. Like this is the most commercial album by far. From here going backwards, unless you like bells and whistles, because
DeGuella is a great record, though.
It has bells and whistles. That's what made that one successful,
record,
right?
That's their best one. But I'm holding this up the 6-pack.
It's basically super recorded, right? And it's really accessible. So that was going to be one of my picks too. So.
I really love the last 4 songs on that album, starting with Pearl Necklace, groovy little hippie pad. Heaven, Hell, or Houston's really, really strange song. I think it's great.
So and Parish.
Party on the Patio. Yeah, great stuff.
Well, Parish, if you compare that to DeGuella, which is stronger? I'm just throwing it out there. I think DeGuella is way stronger, but
DeGuella was the album I got into ZZ Top on. So that was, I had a couple of singles, but that was the first album I bought. I have to say, I wasn't sure until I went and saw them live, and then everything seemed to fall into place for me with ZZ Top after I saw them live. So I think it's a really good album, but as I said, this is my favorite ZZ Top album.
All right, there you go.
It's cool. Just very strong with the quality of the songs, I think.
Nice.
Yeah, like Martin said, those 2 tracks got a lot. I know in Central Ohio, they got a lot of play. They still play them today. So, I mean, that says something. That does say something. So
about Central Ohio.
Well, I don't know, but Nick, where you are, what does it say? Do you ever hear those? Do they still play them?
No.
Oh, well.
No, it was.
Well, I mean, weirdly, I mean, it didn't turn out that it turned into record sales, right? I mean, this thing just went gold, and it's bizarre that it still sits at gold after the next one goes diamond, right? That's supposed to drag everything along in a big way, and it really didn't. So,
yeah, just weird. You never know how things are going to turn out, gentlemen. I'm just saying. Well, Parish, that's a good choice. All right, Rich, what you got?
Well, my second choice is Gentle Giant Civilian. And this is definitely a contrarian. I think this is definitely a contrarian pick. I can understand why it didn't do well. I mean, the 2 albums before it, Missing Piece and Giant for a Day, I mean, they had some real crap on it, I mean, especially Missing Piece. I think the first half of Missing Piece is the worst thing they ever did, especially with I Bet You Thought We Couldn't Do It. The worst song they ever did. And actually, Giant for a Day had a few songs that I kind of liked, but I can understand why those 2 albums didn't connect, and bring them better sales. But Civilian, I thought, even though it didn't sound like their earlier stuff, I thought it was a real return to form. I thought it was a really strong album, kind of a mix of hard rock, progressive rock, and new wave. Some of the guitars for the song Underground remind me of Duran Duran a little bit. I thought it was them kind of updating their sound and moving into the 80s. I think it's a really good album. It's one of my it's in my top 3 of favorite Gentle Giant albums. And I really love the bonus track that the track that didn't make the original album, Heroes No More. I think that's one of the best previously unreleased songs I think I've ever heard. I just love that song. And I'm just wondering if, if that was on the original album, if it had, it would have done better. But and another funny thing about this is that for the longest time, I was like, how come the word civilian isn't on the cover? And it actually is. It's in red in the word Gentle Giant. If you see where all the red is, that's where it has civilian. But for the longest time, I didn't see that. It wasn't until like last year, the year before. It's like, oh, okay, So yeah, that's my number 2 pick.
Yeah, it's a good pick. But did Gentle Giant ever really sell any records?
Not really.
It's pretty obscure, quirky stuff, right? I mean, it can't be really expected to do all that hot, right?
I mean, if I can understand why it flopped, but I think it's a great album, and
that's good. That's a valid point.
I think it deserves.
But Rich, this is what this show's about: to turn people on to things that maybe they haven't even heard of. But that's a great choice, and that was the last Gentle Giant album.
Yeah,
so it's not giant. Well, it's not like the one that came before. So
I'm kind of glad they stopped there, because if they continued, who knows? They probably would have, gone the way of Jethro Tull or Genesis, or incorporated drum machines and fake sounding drums. So I mean, I thought it was a strong step. I thought it was
a great point. That's a good point.
Strong finish.
Yep, I agree. All right, Martin, what you got?
Well, let's go with this one next. Let's go with Starz Violation. This is a band that everybody thought should have been bigger. It was on Capitol. There we go. Nick's got it out as well. I've got my
Nick's ready to go. Holy crap!
My Starz patch here. Look at that thing, eh? Nice, properly done patch. But this kind of speaks to the whole idea. There were always ads. There was like Tama endorsements. The songs are amazing. They were a good-looking band. Violation had stuff like Cherry Baby, which should have been a big hit. Rock Six Times could have been a big hit as well. Good heavy ones on here that are also accessible, like really high quality Kiss songs like Violation and Subway Terror. Cool one on here as well. The first album was full of great songs as well. I mean, look at that band, eh? It's definitely a good looking band ready to take on the world kind of thing, right? And they got embossing for this and the whole bit. So yeah, this is just a band everybody thought should have been bigger. They were just like a good commercial version of like a cross between Ted Nugent and Kiss, well recorded. And then, unfortunately, after this, they made a really sort of horrendous pop move that alienated everybody with attention shoppers. Then they tried to come back with, there you go.
Oh, look at Nick.
They tried to come back with Coliseum Rock, but it wasn't very, very well recorded. It was just kind of very stiff sounding. But the first 2 albums breathe. They've got personality, and there was a lot of push behind them. Like I say, I just always remember seeing them in Circus Magazine, whether it's articles or ads, which usually went hand in hand. It's there's one for you that a lot of people sort of scratch their head on.
Yeah. Well, I will say that Cherry Baby is a power pop classic. One of the best singles of the 70s. I will say that.
Yeah.
Yep. And it's great live too. They play it really. It's great. It's great to hear that song live too. It's excellent.
Yeah, it's underrated. It's forgotten now. But no, that's a great pick. I'm going to go with the band New England. The first album came out, 1979?
Yep.
Paul Stanley produced it?
Yep.
Holy crap, came out on Infinity Records. Now, if you look back in the archives, in the history of record reviews, This record did not get that great a review. But my God, people, if you go back and listen to this now, this should have been way more than what it should have been. We've got good production. We've got pop and prog combined together into one package. It is at least the first album is a classic in my book. Paul Stanley did a wonderful job in production. I think Paul should have produced more bands than what he did. But, if we didn't have New England, we would not have Alcatraz. I'm just saying that, kids. But this is totally different than Alcatraz. But, oh, my God, the songwriting, the production, this is a great record. Also, the second album, check that out, too. I think this was produced by Mike Stone. We don't have Paul Stanley on this one, but, oh, my God, equally, you need to check this out. And, of course, the third New England album. All I'm saying, kids, is just please check out the catalog of New England. They should have had a better hand dealt than what they got. They started off strong, but was it the timing? Was it what was going on in the industry? I don't know. But I can guarantee you, this should be a classic. That first album is killer. So check it out.
It's pump rock, right? I mean, it's Angel
yeah.
is sounding like that in 79. You've got the Babies, you're going to get John Waite solo, you've got Piper, you're going to get Billy Squire, you're going to get Night Ranger soon. Loverboy is going to be big. It's the first Cars album is 79, the Knack is 79. So you're moving into that space where they might have been early. Or they might have been a better hair metal band had they been sort of debuting in 82, 83.
Right.
But at this time they're a little Midwest rock as well. I mean, at least moving into that sort of when Sammy Hagar was big. They've got a little bit of the commercial Sammy Hagar sound. But yeah, this is like a cross between, you're really moving into that Loverboy Night Ranger pocket, right?
It's
that 80
like
to 82
transitional
thing.
record,
Pre-hair metal
era.
Yeah, pump rock, little bit. You've also even got a little bit of the honkin' sort of Deep Purple keyboardy sort of thing, but in a pump direction. Like the production almost vibrates. It like makes your woofers vibrate, kind of thing. Because the keys are kind of low register on it. And don't ever want to lose you is the big song, right?
Oh my God! And hello.
Yeah.
I don't think anything quite sounded like this at the time. Maybe it was timing that, I don't know. Paul Stanley saw something in him. I'm just going to leave it at that.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying, after all these years, I would go back and listen to that New England catalog because I think there's a lot there to offer.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm always looking for new old stuff to listen to. So
that's what I'm about, Rich.
Yeah,
Holy
I know.
crap.
That's God.
All right. So there you go. That's my recommendation.
Nick, number 3.
All right, good. I had a different number 3, but I'm going to change it because of Martin's choice, and there's a connection. I was lucky enough to be in a band years ago that opened for Starz. They were wonderful. It was a fantastic experience. They were great guys. Got to hang out, the whole thing. I was sitting watching Starz with a good friend of mine who's very knowledgeable about music, and Michael Lee Smith from Starz tells the audience they're gonna play a cover song or by a friend of his, and they talks about the song, plays a song. My friend's leaning over, goes, "Do you know this song? You know this song? This is a great band." I'm like, I don't know who it is. Afterwards, he has to educate me who the band was. The song was called Love Shit, and the band is called the Wild Hearts. And I know it's tough to pick a first album by a band, but I think though this album is so good. And in the United States, not in the UK, but in the US, this just sank like a stone. No one knows about it. I know it was released in 93. I know grunge, blah, blah, yada, yada. This album is too good to be ignored. It should have done more business. It is that good. And I know it's a first album and the albums after it, but this first album should have done more business. It was great. Love Shit's on there. Stars, Good Friends, Ginger, and Michael Lee Smith. And this is an album that I think is just fantastic. and more people in the U.S. should know about it, especially if you like any kind of hard rock, if you like any kind of quote unquote 80s metal, hair metal, whatever. That should be part of your collection. If you like power pop, it should be part of your collection. Ginger Wildheart. Well, he has a lot of things going on in his life. The band comes and goes, and he has solo albums, but he has some issues. But that guy should be a song doctor or write for people, because man, he could help out a lot of bands. He could help out a lot of legacy artists. I'd hire that guy in a second to write music for me if I was a legacy artist.
They're like beautiful, hooky, sweet
melodies.
Hooky,
melodies,
hard rock, hair metal, pop punk almost, but from an English.
Yep.
They're a little bit Saigon Kick, a little bit Enough's Enough. They're always mentioned by rock stars. Rock stars love the Wild Hearts. They love mentioning their name, and they should have been bigger. That's an awesome choice. Yeah.
Nick, what year was that?
93.
93.
And Grant, I never heard of it.
No one paid attention to that.
I'm telling you, it is that good. I didn't know about it till when Starz mentioned it, and the fact that I never heard of it, never saw them in magazines, nothing at all. So
that is a great choice.
Their albums have meandered and gone left and right, but that first one is really, really good, really strong.
Gotta love that cover. Wow, that cover is amazing.
Yeah.
What was the song that they covered?
Well, it was Starz doing Love Shit.
Right. Oh yes, you said
And what label was that on, Nick?
East West.
That's all right. Well, I'm gonna write that down.
Atlantic. Yeah, you gotta hear it. You gotta get it. It's just that good.
Excellent.
I'd best describe them as a grunge version of Cheap Trick.
Yeah, that's an excellent description. That's really good.
Holy crap, good. Parish! This is why we call you the Parish of Rock.
And you are up now.
Oh no, I'm up next. Yeah. So, my next one, I thought I'd do something a bit more contemporary, and I picked this one particularly for Grant. The Darkness.
Oh, you did?
The Darkness. One-way ticket to hell and back.
Yes, that's there. There you go.
It's their second album. It was released in 2005. It was produced by Roy Thomas Baker, who obviously produced Queen, The Cars, and others. It was the follow-up to this album, Permission to Land, which came out a couple of years earlier.
Which is a great 5-star record, Parish.
And at the time was considered, certainly in the UK, as rock's next big thing. But unfortunately, it flopped. This album in the UK was a #1 album, was 4 times platinum, which is about 1.5 million. It was also platinum in Canada, Australia. I think it was gold in the US. It had a #2 single with, I believe, in a thing called Love, and was just absolutely massive, was absolutely huge. This came out a couple of years later, as I say, One-Way Ticket to Hell and Back, and unfortunately only got to number 11 in the charts and didn't certify. So it was a flop. Why was it a flop? Or more to the point, why don't I know why it was a flop? They were still riding really high when this came out. They just prior to it had another big hit that got to #2, which was a Christmas song called Christmas Time, Don't Let the Bells End. So they were still really popular. The album was a critical success. If I just read from the sticker here, Kerrang said it's outrageous, fabulous, genius, all round, all aboard the crazy train. Q Magazine said, let there be rock again, 4 stars. Classic Rock gave it 9 out of 10, a smart and ambitious album of the year. And The Sun, which is a tabloid newspaper over here, said it's riffmastic, glamtastic, brilliant. So it was definitely a critical success. The arena tour that came out, they announced just as the album came out, sold out overnight. So there's clearly still a big fan base there. And I think it's a really good album. I think it's a really good album. And therefore it doesn't even suffer from that kind of second album syndrome that maybe you'd expect it to happen. So I am a bit stumped on why it was a flop. The only reason I can think of is the clue is probably in this insert that was in the CD. Bearing in mind this was 2006, and what it is the ringtone. So you can pay £3 for a ringtone, and you text a number and it gives you the ringtone, and all of the songs are One Way Ticket, Knockers, another song off the album, Is It Me, etc. So it's all songs off the album. The problem is there was only one ringtone anybody ever wanted from The Darkness, and that was I Believe in a Thing Called Love. And I think the reason perhaps this wasn't a hit was because it just didn't have a single of that magnitude. It just did not cross over to the masses like that single did. So even though it's a fantastic album, and as I say, they were still riding high. The album itself just didn't do very well. So what happened next? Well, unlike the other two that I spoke about, where they kind of went on to bigger and better things, unfortunately for the Darkness, they split up. They formed Justin Hawkins.
Hot Leg
formed a band called Hot Leg. The rest of the band formed Stone Gods. Justin was going through a sort of drugs and alcohol problem. And so they almost disappeared. I mean, I was lucky enough to see the Darkness several times before they split. I saw Stone Gods and Hot Leg as well as they toured. But those other bands did nothing. And I guess because of that, they decided they were better together than apart. So they reformed in 2012, came back with an album called Hot Cakes, which went to number 3 in the UK charts, number 3 or number 4, something like that. And they pretty much released an album every 2 years ever since. And they go on this tour, this kind of loop now of an album and a tour and an album and a tour every 2 years. And Justin Hawkins, the singer, is a bit of a celebrity now. He's kind of known beyond the sort of rock fans. Very popular. I don't know if they're very popular in the rest of the world, but they're certainly very popular.
Not here.
No.
And they just announced the 20th anniversary tour for this. I think they're going to do big things with the album coming out. And I went online that morning and I couldn't get tickets. It sold out. And I was prepared to go to sort of 6 or 7 different venues, and it just sold out. So it shows you that the sort of the popularity of the band. But for some reason, that album, and they still play quite a few tracks from the album, so it still seems pretty popular, but just flopped.
Yeah, but Parish, you can't.
Previous one.
I think that is a great pick. But think about it. You said it went to number 11 in the UK. Is that really a flop? Yeah. You can't always, it's like REO Speedwagon with High Infidelity. Big record, number 1, but then they put out Good Trouble. Not quite as good, but it still fared well on the charts.
I think it's all relative. And I mean, Martin said earlier that some of these are relative flops, I guess. And you would say an album that got to 11 in the charts for a rock album and had a single that got in the top 10 as a rock single, you'd say was pretty good. But when you compare it with what came before...
That's the problem. That's the problem.
I think what the expectation was with them, and even what's come since. I mean, since they reformed, their albums have been generally top 10 albums, 1 or 2, certainly radio hits. Whether they've been big chart hits is another matter, but there's certainly been radio hits off those albums. So I think again, not just comparing it with Permission to Land, but comparing it with albums after, it didn't do as well as those albums.
Nice.
It's a good choice, but it's a great record. I would say, I'm just going to go out. I totally agree with the Parish because, well, he is the Parish of Rock for one. But if you're into the Darkness, please look at that second album. Because I remember when it came out, I kind of listened to it and I went, but then, oh my God, if you really give it some time, let it soak in, it's absolutely brilliant. I'll leave it at that.
Nice.
It's brilliant stuff. They were on fire, even though Justin was having some drug issues. Whatever, they delivered. Look at this. You've got Roy Thomas Baker on the Christmas single. You still had Bob Ezrin. You know what? I was going to say, Parish. I know I'm on a tangent. I wonder why they didn't bring Bob Ezrin in for that second album. Though I totally agree that Roy Thomas Baker would be perfect with that Queen thing.
One reason it's both Justin's and Dan Queen as their band. That was their band. So the opportunity for them to record with Roy. It's a bit like Cheap Trick with
George
Martin.
Right.
You know, that album, I think it's a brilliant album. It's another one I could have picked here, I guess. It's a really good album. But it is slightly different. It has a slightly different sound to what went before. But I'm sure if you talk to the Cheap Trick guys, they would say it's one of the best albums because of who they have produced.
They did say that. So you're right, Parish. God, that's a great pick. All right, Parish, thanks so much. Let's throw over to Rich.
My third choice, it was an EP that came out in '91, and it was by the Kinks. And it was called Did Ya? It was a 5-song EP, including the song Did You, a live version of Gotta Move, an updated version of Days, new song called New World, and a great Dave Davies song called Look Through Any Doorway. This came out in '91, and their last few albums hadn't done that well. Think Visual, which I thought it was one of my favorite Kinks albums, and then UK Jive, which to me has one great song on it, Looney Balloon, and then this came out, and I thought Did Ya really should have been their next big hit. I mean, I was really disappointed and surprised that it didn't put them back on top, because to me it had all the trademarks of a great Kinks song, and there's one point in the song where they make a musical reference to Sunny Afternoon, and the song has the calliope in it. It's just a really catchy, likable song. I love Ray Davies singing for it, and I just think it's sad that it just did nothing, because I really think it could have really restarted their career and put them back on top, and it was completely ignored. And on the EP, it says, look for a new Kinks album in '92. Well, the next Kinks album didn't come out until '93. And unfortunately, that album only had one song on it that I liked. I thought it was terrible. The album Phobia, and the song Scattered.
Not good.
And I think on later editions of Phobia, Did You was as a bonus track. But yeah, I thought Phobia was just one of their weakest albums, maybe their worst album. I thought it was a really bad album for them to end on. But Did Ya? Yeah, I really think that should have been a hit. That was, somebody screwed up. They didn't push it enough. I don't know what happened, but yeah. So that's my third choice.
Cool, nice,
good choice.
Yeah.
All right, Martin.
Okay, my last choice, I'm going to go with the Tubes and Completion Backwards Principle. Just last night on a show, I was waxing eloquent about one of my fondest memories is sitting backstage with these guys in Buffalo at the Bears Den in the Seneca Casino, and talking to these guys. And I was actually quite astounded that this album didn't even go gold for them. I remember it being on the radio all the time. I just thought it was so catchy, just song after song after song of just great hard rock power pop. You talk about your New Englands and your Babies and maybe a little bit of Cars. But boy, who else would you compare these guys to? I took out Remote Control as well, because basically these two, they go together for me. This is the one with the famous, Hollywood Squares band shot on the back, but super entertaining band live. But you could put that all aside if it was too much for you and just revel in how great these songs were. They were all sort of almost like your Steely Dan level type players, but they were doing this pretty simple music. And then they even got more, commercial with Outside, Inside, Inside, Outside, whatever it's called. And then the other one. Yeah, there you go. I always get that and the Blue Cheer backwards, and I never know which one I'm saying right. But well, speaking of backwards, yeah. So this is called the completion backwards principle. But yeah, I mean the songs on here. Talk to You Later was on all the time on the radio, and the beautiful ballad on here, Don't Want to Wait Anymore, was big. Let's Make Some Noise is a good song. And yeah, these guys never had a gold album. I don't believe. I didn't check it again, but I'm pretty sure they didn't.
Wow.
And I just thought they were a huge band during this time, given how much they were on the radio, but they weren't. So I don't know.
Well, at this time, they were a lot more accessible with that David Foster production.
Mm-hmm.
He opened them up way more than what they had before. I mean, they were trying to get a hit. Capitol's probably going, all right, gentlemen, we've signed you. We need a hit.
Yeah.
But what was the hit? Remind me, Martin, what was the hit off that one?
Well, Talk to You Later and Don't Want to Wait Anymore, I would say.
Pretty big hit.
Yeah.
You know?
Think About Me. I think maybe not. Maybe it's just those two. And then the previous one, I love TV is King. That's probably my favorite Tube song. I mean, I love all the Tubes albums, but what a catchy song. That should have been a smash hit off of this one. So, and this is produced by Todd Rundgren, this album.
Yeah.
That's another band I gotta listen to. I never got into them, but definitely I will give them a listen.
Yeah.
You might want to check out those first two Capitol albums, Rich. Start out with that.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Okay.
I don't know. Martin may have a different opinion, but
well, I love the first couple of them and now as well. Yeah, Captain Beefheart cover they do, which is amazing. But and then White Punks on Dope was such a huge song. You know, as kids, that song was always like right next to Earache My Eye from Cheech and Chong, right? Those two went together as kids, right? But yeah, that's quite like a proggy, interesting, theatrical sort of album. So yeah, just great band.
Great band.
She's a Beauty was quite a big hit over here.
Which one?
She's a Beauty.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I can't remember which album that was on.
This one.
The next one.
Yeah,
that one.
Yeah, that was a pretty big hit over here. And that was really my introduction into them.
I kind of look at both of those albums, since they're both David Foster albums, just kind of, they're like the same record. It's like I look at the first Cars album, the second Cars album. You could just mix them up and they'd all fit.
So Outside Inside is produced by David Foster too?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Because I put these two together all the time for some reason because they break away from the logo and stuff and like, well, yeah, I guess the third one does too, but those first three feel like a set to me. And then
didn't that Fee Waybill album, didn't he have David Foster produce that?
Yeah, possibly. That did not do that well at all. And it was kind of more corporate stuffy. But I put the last two together because the last two are quite funky and out there and instrumental stuff and rhythmic. And it's almost like the way Boomtown Rats went at the end, right?
Yeah,
just a little too funky. So I put those last two together.
So there you go. That's a great choice. Holy crap. All right, gentlemen, for the last choice, I was looking for the CD. This is why we were late. I was looking for the CD for a prop, but I don't need a prop because I'll put the graphic in here. I am talking about the band Aviary from 1979. Holy crap. This album came out. It didn't do anything. It's a combination of prog, Queen, AOR, Loverboy. It's absolutely brilliant. Stephen Schnee, who I've done some shows with, turned me on to this record. This is an AOR classic. It came out on Epic 1979. It was the only album they ever put out. They reissued it on Rock Candy. Oh my God. If you like AOR, you like Queen, you like any of this stuff, I promise I would never steal you wrong. This is a record you need to check out.
And what's the name of the group?
Band is called Aviary.
Okay.
Aviary.
And the album is called Aviary. It was the only album they put out. They put out an album later, but it was like 20 years later. I'm sure it's fine.
Yeah.
But when you get on Discogs to look at it and you look for like the records, all you'll find are promo copies. I don't know if this album ever hit the shelves. I don't know if it ever hit a record store, but it is absolutely, I swear to God, I am not trying to steer anybody wrong. Please check this record out. It's on Rock Candy. They still have it on CD. They reissued it. It never got a CD release other than what Rock Candy did. If you like Queen, AOR, Triumph, anything in that genre, please check it out. It's absolutely, it's a 5-star record. You can go and look at the reviews for it. It gets great reviews. I wouldn't steer you wrong. That would be my number one choice because, like I said, Stephen Schnee turned me on to it. And I went, well, yeah. I listened to it. I went, oh my God, I had an outer body experience. It's like one of those moments in your life where you hear something and you go, the door, the clouds part, the water parts, you know, certain records you hear. Why did this not take off in 1979? I have no idea.
Wow.
Brilliant. Absolutely great stuff. Great stuff. So if you like Queen, AOR, highly recommended. I'm just saying, just throwing it out there.
Yep.
Great record.
Cool.
All right. Does anybody else have anything else? We've went over an hour or so.
Well, I'll just blast out my. So I had Rex similar to Starz. I had Derringer similar to in that camp. Some should have been kind of like an Aerosmith, especially with Sweet Evil. Coney Hatch. I actually did had a prop out for Sons of Freedom. Should have been a big, really cool grunge band out of Vancouver, but kind of really interesting. So this was one I was going to talk about. They only had 2 other albums like this. Yeah, that's it for me.
All right, cool. Well, I will throw out a couple more. We were talking about, I'll wrap this up quick. So we were talking about Aviary. If you've ever heard the band Mayday, we're talking in that same genre, more power pop, but then you have that AOR kind of thing. Oh my God, they put out 2 records. These are out on Rock Candy because I've just been kind of going and just randomly buying Rock Candy stuff because they have all this stuff that no one's ever heard. You know, people always ask me, well, Grant, what do you listen to now? And I'm going, well, not much. There's so much to get caught up on. But these Mayday things, this is another one that Stephen Schnee turned me on to. Oh my God. Check those out. Blue, real quick, if you're into power pop, Blue is a great artist. He's put out various albums. He does a lot of like soundtrack work and stuff. He did a track for the first Spider-Man soundtrack. But if you like power pop and great songwriting, great production, this is good. This has got one of the members of Jellyfish on here, so I'm just going to leave it at that. But check this out too. But there's, like I said, there is so much that we need to turn people on to.
Now, I wanted to just
go ahead, Rich. You're up.
Well, I just wanted to show you an album that I think at the beginning of the show we're talking about just picking out albums that you never heard of before, you never saw before. Mm-hmm. I saw this album, the Enid, in the region of the Summer Stars.
Oh my God!
I saw that at my local record store for like $5, and I never heard it before. I never heard anything of it, and I bought it because I thought the cover looked really cool. And it ends up, I love the album. It's kind of like progressive rock.
It's progressive.
A little bit of ambient music. I mean, I could play it during both hours of my show and it would completely fit in. So yeah, I was really pleasantly surprised by that album. I think it's a really good, out of all the stuff I've heard of there so far, I think that's my favorite.
Well, Rich, Rand and I did a show on that on my channel. So
really?
check in my cool. Yeah.
All right, yeah.
Rand and I are all over the prog scene.
Okay.
So, but check it out because it's brilliant, and you can hear Rand go on and go on and go on.
Cool. Yeah, I've heard him go on and go on. That's all right.
So does anybody else have any? But that's a good choice.
I bet you Parish has one or two honorable mentions. No?
Well, he is the Parish of Rock.
I'm going to go with one. I think is an honorable mention. Jimmy Barnes.
Great.
For the working class man. I think in the rest of outside of Australia, I think it was just called Jimmy Barnes, certainly in the States when it came out. And the reason I don't understand why it flopped was it came out on Geffen at a time when Geffen could do no wrong. They had Whitesnake, they had Aerosmith, Sammy Hagar. A bit after this, they had Guns N' Roses, so they didn't seem to be able to do anything wrong. They brought out the big guns in order to record this with Jimmy Barnes. So on the album, you've got Jonathan Cain, you've got Mick Fleetwood, you've got Tommy Thayer, who's now in Kiss. On there, you've got Randy Jackson, Kim Carnes of Betty Davis Eyes does the backing vocals. You've got songs written by Stephen Van Zandt from Springsteen's band and also from Jonathan Cain. So they really went to town to make it a big hit. And it came out at the same time when this type of music was huge. I mean, you had Springsteen was high, sort of about the same time, about a year later after Born in the USA. John Cougar Mellencamp was on a roll with 3 albums on the trot, which I think were sort of top 5, maybe number 1 albums in the States. Bryan Adams had released Reckless just before this, and this music just fits perfectly in with that. And for me, this is actually my favorite album of all time. And I just do not understand why it's not been a hit anywhere else.
Yeah.
Nice. But and even now if he plays live, he plays half this album. So it was and in number 1 in Australia, number 1 in New Zealand, but outside of those 2 countries did nothing. Mm-hmm. And what happened really after it flopped? Well, nothing really. He's gone on to be massive in Australia, continues to be massive in Australia. And New Zealand, he's had 15 number 1 solo albums in Australia, 5 albums with Cold Chisel, which was the band he was in previously, and he tends to be ignored everywhere else in the world. And I continue to be amazed that he's not been more popular. Really, I think he's fantastic.
Wow. Nice.
Yeah, Jimmy never did anything here in the States
other than an Excess tune.
Yes, of course. Yeah,
good song.
Yeah.
You want me to give you a couple fast?
Sure.
Yeah, why not?
All
We're over. So what makes a difference?
Listen.
Go ahead, Nick.
Listen. If you like this one, which was a great initial album, and that was about a 9 or a 10, this is a 9 or a 10. It's fantastic. It's hard rock. It sank like a stone. Didn't do anything, but fantastic. I've mentioned these before on other shows. I think this one's a good one. It's one of their best. Walk on Water, UFO. It's imperfect, especially towards the end when they redo songs they don't need to. I was surprised Martin didn't mention this one, but the first album was great, and this improved on it. Love, Hate, Wasted in America. That's really should have been bigger than the first album, but it's really good. And the last one I've never mentioned on the show before, but 1989, Andee Johns producing the hard rock metal Philadelphia band, with Cinderella, Bon Jovi, that cabal. It's a band called Tangier. Tangier. They came out with an album. The problem was they replaced the lead singer with someone that was a little more Bon Jovi-like, I think, another Philly guy. And I just think that they lost a little bit of personality with the original singer, Bill Mattson. Anyway, I would describe this album as Slide It In, but in 1989. It's that good and that kind of sound. So,
what label was that on, Nick? What label did that come out on?
Atco. Didn't do Dick. I saw them live.
I've never seen that record, ever.
They were fun. I saw them live. They were good. They were great. He's got a very, very, very good voice, this guy. Didn't do much afterwards, but, it's definitely worth seeking out. It's on, Spotify at all. And it's an album that should have done better business, even though it was an initial album.
Nice.
Right.
Cool.
Did that ever? I'm sure that came out on CD at one point.
Oh, yeah, of course. I got it.
Of course, Nick's got it right here.
Yeah, right
You
there.
want to see the CD? Here it is. But well, maybe that's something to seek out. And that's what this show's about. We want to turn you on to things that maybe you might not come across naturally. You know, there's a lot of great records out there that you don't know about, you know. God, this is great. I love it. Does anybody else? We're going to wrap this dog up. Anybody else have anything else? I think we're
wrap it up.
Wrap up. All right. I want to thank the whole panel. Of course, Martin's here. Nick, the Parish of Rock, and then Rich is here. We want to thank the whole panel for coming on. Please leave a comment. We want to hear. Are there some records that you think that people should be turned on to that maybe slipped by, that kind of fell between the cracks? We want to hear from you. If you'd like to be on one of these panels, we do have a Patreon that you can subscribe to. We'd love to have you on. If you want to talk music, this is the place. Also, we have a Ko-fi account if you want to buy us a pint or a cup of coffee. We'd love that. Also, we love donos. So feel free to just give us a donation. We're doing this because we love music. So without any further ado, I'm going to sign this dog off. Thanks, gentlemen. And please like, subscribe, you know, whole routine. And we will see you on the next one.
All right. Thanks, guys. See you later. Bye now.